Hello, I'm Chessmaster Carl Boor with MyChessBrain.com, and today we're going to be looking at David vs. Goliath. My friend David Zimbeck, who's also a chess master, showed me a game he played recently against a chess computer by the name of Crafty, and this game was played at a faster time control. I'm not sure what the time control was, but it was at a faster time control, and this game is a fun game, and it's also an introduction to an opening known as the Halloween Gambit, which begins in the 4 knights opening. This is the starting position of the 4 knights. A lot of ways to get to this position. Let's replay that beginning part. So double king pawn, out come the knights. And here white has a shocking move. He sacrifices a whole knight for a pawn, and in return for the sacrifice we're going to see that white gets a overpowering or a strong attack in the center with a pawn roller. The pawns are going to play a key part in this attack. So immediately the black knight is under attack, and here black has to retreat his knight to the first rank. So just like that, white can develop a strong initiative. Here I think that white probably has a good chance to be fully justified for the piece sacrifice. David's next move is an overprotecting move that prepares to play pawn to f5. By protecting the e5 square and creating a veiled threat to the black king, he's also preventing black from moving any moves like d6, because then we can play a discovered check with pawn takes pawn. So queen e2 is a nice controlling move to keep black's options restricted. The computer played a pin, bishop b4, and now comes f5. So here I think it would have been very interesting. The computer goes for a tactical sequence in this position to try to win material, but it ends up getting in a little bit of trouble, or a lot of trouble. Instead, I think an interesting alternative would be knight to f8. Looks a little silly, pitting the pieces on the first rank like this, but I'm not quite sure how white would go about the winning of the game. We have a few ideas. g7 is not protected, so we have an immediate double attack with queen g4 against the bishop on b4 and the pawn on g7. Black should take, check, and then play a defensive move like g6. Yeah, seems like black is surviving. Another idea, after knight f8, is to play pawn f6, which attacks the g7 pawn as well. Now, I think pawn takes pawn is a clear mistake, because white will be able to win his piece back. So there's like 3 different blocks, and each one of the blocks we can capture the piece of the pawn and have a good game. Against f6, looks like he has to play g6, and I like g4 at first glance. The idea is to stop any of these knights from getting out. We want to just restrict them to the back row. So we can just clamp down on the whole position by pushing our g-pawn and eventually probably castling long, developing the rest of the forces. The interesting middle game. Well, instead of that, black played queen h4 check. White blocked, and now a double attack against the d5 square and c3. Pawn takes the knight, check, check again with a new double attack, and white is just going to sacrifice that rook for a nice attack against the black king. Instead of taking the rook, I think black should definitely consider queen takes pawn check is a less greedy option and a better option, I think. Ironically, the computer probably didn't do it because of queen block, and it says to itself, you know, I don't want to trade queens and only be up 2 points. But in this case, black would be winning, so queen e2 is a mistake. White most likely should play bishop e2, and then again, safety first, pawn takes pawn, and I think that black has good chances here to hold the game, and perhaps even be better. After all, he's only 2 moves away from getting to a castle position, and has a 2-pawn advantage. On the other hand, white has 2 bishops still to attack with, and it would be an interesting game. But instead, the computer took the rook. And I like David's move here. It's just a simple capture. Pawn takes pawn, exposing the king to a check, and it's a double attack, so the king takes the knight. And now a really important move. Pawn c3, exclam, immobilizing the black queen. Yes, white is down a rook, but he has an exposed king, no development besides his queen, and with white's last move, pawn c3, he's effectively taken the queen out of the battle. So, the computer scurries to safety with king e8. Now white finishes the job of trapping that black queen. No more squares for the black queen. And white simply plans to castle, move the bishop on c1 to a3, and then the rook will be capturing the queen, which will give white a definite winning advantage. So, after bishop d3, the computer developed his knight. White castles, preparing to win the black queen, and now rook f8. We would never want to trade rooks in this position unless we could force a checkmate. Don't trade pieces when you have extra, or when you're down material. That would be a bad option. So rook e1 is a good move, keeping the threat with bishop a3 next, which would expose the queen to capture. So rook f3 for black. It's an interesting tactical move. This move slows white's attack down. Now bishop a3 would be a mistake, because we have a positive connection on e1 and on d3. That's the perfect setup for what is known as removing the guard or deflection. The rook would capture the bishop, and now white's attack is falling apart. So, after rook f3, David played a very good move. He played queen c2. Keeps the queen trapped on a1, and now prepares to put the bishop on d2, which will protect the rook and finish off the black queen. Since there's no way to save the queen, the rook does a sacrifice. Rook takes bishop. Queen takes the rook, and now the black queen is free to move about. However, black still has poor development for his pieces and an exposed king. White's next move does trade pieces. It removes one of the few protectors of the black king. Now, rooks belong on open lines, so rook f1, which prepares to play a checkmate in 3 or 4 moves, maybe 2 or 3 moves, with queen takes h7, queen g8, and the rook and the queen will be able to combine for a checkmate against the king. There's really not much black can do about that. And we play queen a5, in came the queen, and one way this game could have finished, the computer dragged things out by giving away its queen like this, and eventually white won. Just to show a checkmate pattern, we'll see queen d5 instead. All checks, and then mate. I'm Carl Boor.